am so excited. It is finally time to put the sleeves on this thing. Yes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to review the pattern so that we know exactly where we're supposed to be picking up stitches on the sleeve. We are going to prepare sleeve number 1 for working on a magic loop by itself. So if you're not interested in doing 2 at a time sleeves, fair. I cannot be trusted to finish anything that has a match, whether it's a glove or if it's a sock or a leg warmer or a sleeve. I have to do them 2 at a time, or else I will put it down and never finish. So that's why I love 2 at a time. So we are going to get the first sleeve all set up for working by itself. Then we're going to set that aside and we're going to prepare the second sleeve also for working by itself. Then once all of our stitches are on and we're ready to work the sleeves, we're going to transfer them to the same needle so that they can be worked at the same time. So first of all, let's find our way around the sleeve hole. So you can see that I have all of my stitches that are live on a piece of waste yarn. But we also have to pick up and knit some stitches all along here because these end right here. So we need some stitches all along here. So what's going to happen is we are going to have to pick up some stitches underneath these legs down here of the cast on edge we did while separating the sleeves. So you can see that when I go to, I can easily kind of stick a needle through the top of here and I get under 2 legs. So you'll see that we want to do 2 legs when we're picking up the stitches from along here. So we're going to pick up a couple of stitches. We're going to place a stitch marker because we want the stitch marker to be right in the middle of the armpit underneath. And then we're going to pick up a few more stitches over here. Then after our cast on edge, it looks like this one, possibly this one is going to be the last stitch from my cast on edge. But I still have to get all the way up here where my live stitches start. So we are going to cast on 2 stitches in the middle here to close this gap. Now there, we don't have a very convenient way to just slip underneath like that. So what I like to do, now this is just, obviously we're not going to use that. It's going to create a big hole. We're also not going to go right through here because look at that, that creates a big hole. So you actually want to make sure that you go underneath 2 pieces of yarn, okay? So let me just move this one out of the way. You can see here that there are 2 legs of a stitch right here. So when I go through the fabric, I want to go under both of those. That way when I pull upward, it doesn't create a big hole, okay? So it's kind of great because here it's easy to find your way because there's pretty much a hole with 2 legs underneath. And over here, you can kind of pick anywhere you want to, just so long as you get underneath a good enough amount of stitches that when you pull upward away from the fabric, it doesn't create a big hole. So we are going to start here. We're going to pick up some stitches, place a marker, pick up some stitches. Then we're going to pick up 2 in the gap here. Then we're going to knit across all of these stitches over here, come back down. And again, we started right here, so we're going to have a gap between here and here. So then we'll pick up 2 more stitches here, and then we'll be able to close the gap, and then we'll be able to work in the round. Now, because I am going to do the magic loop, I am going to divide the stitches in half here. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take this and match these 2 points together, just like that. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to roll this forward and I'm going to grab a stitch marker, and you can see my live yarn, my waste yarn is right there. So I'm going to just slip a stitch marker under there so I know that that's about divided in half. There's like about the same number of stitches here that there is here. Now, the reason that I'm doing this is because I am using the magic loop, whether or not I do 1 at a time or if I do 2 at a time. So we're going to need some supplies for that. First of all, if These are the size 5s that I'm going to be using for this section of sleeve, but you'll notice it's on a huge cable. This is a 40-inch cable. We need this because we need a lot of extra cable to perform the magic loop while we're doing 2 at a time. Then also, after I prepare sleeve number 1 for working the magic loop, I am going to transfer that to these. These are just my 4s. I'm just going to pass the sleeve off to these needles, set them aside. That sleeve is going to stay put while I prepare sleeve number 2 for working the magic loop in the round. Once I get both sleeves prepared, then I'll transfer them together so that you can work them at the same time. So before we get started on the sleeve, the very first thing we need to do, this is the wrong size needle. This is just for holding. I'm going to set this aside. I'm going to grab my size 5s, and I'm going to very first take my divided sleeve stitches off of the waste yarn and put them on this set of needles. All right, so I'm just going to start picking up the stitches, and I really want to be careful that I don't split the stitch or split myself into the waste yarn down there at the bottom. So if I am very careful and very sneaky, I can slip under all of these stitches and then pull my waste yarn out. Now see this stitch right here, he's kind of a bear. He's a little bit tough to get under. See that? I made it, but let me show you a trick. I'm going to grab another thing. Now, these stitches are safe, so I can pull this yarn out. So I'm just going to pinch right here because I don't want to pull it this way. I only want to pull it from this direction. So I'm going to pull that piece out. So those are free and those are on there forever and ever. But now what that allows me to do is that allows me to pull up on this with my left hand to get some leverage to get under that stitch. Okay, now I'm under that one. And I'm going to keep going until I hit my stitch marker. Okay, there's my stitch marker. So now I'm going to, now that all of these are safely on here, I can get rid of this waste yarn. And I only want to pull it from this side. I don't want to pull it from over here because these guys are still on that thread, right? So pull carefully till these are out. Okay. All right, we have half the sleeve on. So now it is impossible to turn this corner because this needle is long and straight. How am I going to turn it around over there? Well, this is where the beauty of the magic loops comes in. I am just going to slide my needle through here and pull on this cable. Okay, so that over here, let me see if I can get it in here. I have this big, huge loop coming out of this end over here before my needle. That's going to allow me to turn in the other direction and go this way. Now, I'm not left-handed, so I can't go this way. So I'm going to just turn this whole thing upside down. Let me reorient myself so you can see where I'm at. Move that one out of the way. Okay, so I just came this way. I came out. I have a big old long crazy bunch of cable just all pulled up over here, but that allows me to start going this way. So now I am going to continue picking up all of the stitches on the other side. Okay, the last of my stitches are on this side. So now I can pull that waste yarn out of there. And now both halves of my sleeves are on cables. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, now I need to pick up all of these stitches that are over here, right? We need to do 2 in the gap. We need to do some down here. All right, so I'm going to pull this cable. So now what's happening here is I have 2 cables. Well, it's actually 1 cable that I have looped, magic loop, The thing we don't want to do is we don't ever want to let this cable disappear all the way down into here like this, because then we don't know where our half mark is. So always be aware when you're doing the magic loop, this loop should always be present in your cable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this side up, and I'm going to put this side on the needle. Okay, now I have a big giant loop back here, so there's no way that I can lose this. Now I got to turn it around this way because I'm going to start working a different direction. All right, it's time to pick up and start knitting the stitches. Now I'm going to need 1 of 2 balls of yarn. So the other thing you need to prepare yourself for is if you are going to do 2 at a time, you need 2 balls of yarn. Now, I happen to have 2 skeins left over. So I have a skein here, a skein here. This one I used for most of the body, so it's a little smaller than this one. But if you are using larger skeins, or you need to divide one in half to do the sleeves, I have a tutorial on my YouTube channel that will show you how to, it's called dividing a skein into 2 balls, and it will show you how to wind 1 skein into 2 balls so that you can work separately with the magic loop. Okay, so now it's time to start to pick up and knit some stuff. Now that we've got all of this on the needles, it says that we are going to start right here at the cast on edge. I'm going to pick up 3 stitches, I'm going to place a stitch marker, and then I'm going to pick up 4 more. So I'm just going to come under here. Make sure it's always under 2 legs. Okay, here is one of the ends of my balls of yarn. I'm just going to fold it in half, and once I've poked through, I'm just going to put this loop over the top. And then I'm only going to use 1 needle, and I'm going to draw this up just like that. So there's stitch number 1. And then I'm going to go under the next space right there. I'm going to drop my tail to be weaved in later. And pull that yarn up. There's 2. I'm going to go right here. There's 3. I'm going to place my beginning of round marker. And then I'm going to go, I need 4 more. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Okay, now I have to pick up 2 in the gap. So we can very easily see where the gap is now because I've got a needle here and a needle here. So I'm just going to go through the fabric down here, pick up 1 there, and then maybe it looks like right here is a good spot for it. So we're going to go here like that. All right, I have now picked up all of the stitches that I need to close that gap, and blam, look, I'm ready to knit. So here's the thing with the magic loop. I'm going to knit all across these stitches that I just moved onto this needle. Over here, they're on a cable, so I have to stop when I'm done with this needle, and I have to rearrange my cable so that I can knit across the other side. So let's go ahead and knit across this first side here. Okay, last stitch. Okay, so now my magic loop is over here. It's a little small, and now I want this needle to be on the cable down here, and I want these stitches to be on the needle. So the very first thing I do is match the needles. So I'm just going to pull on this cable over here until my needle comes into view, and then I'm very carefully going to slide these onto the needle. So I have this big jumble of cable here, so it's nice and safe. So now that I've got these on both needles, I can just pull this one out of here and pull, 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 pull. Now I don't want to pull too much. I mean, that's still a big loop, so that's pretty safe. But now I can turn around and work the other direction. So again, I'm going to flip the whole thing over because I'm going to work in the opposite direction with the lovely magic loop. And then I'm going to continue knitting this direction across the second set of stitches. All right, here's the last two here. So now I'm all the way across that second set, and let me tuck my tail that I started with out of the way. So we see that we cast on, we picked up and knit stitches over here, and that is all the way over here. So I have a gap. So again, here's the gap. I need to pick up and knit 2 stitches. So I'm just going to go under these guys, pick up 1, and then maybe over here, pick up a second one, just like that. And then it says to knit to the beginning of the round, which is right here. So now what I'm going to do is, even though the beginning of the round is on my needle, I'm going to, or on my other needle, I'm going to push this needle into this set of stitches. Okay, everybody's safe, everybody's happy, we all understand what's going on. We're going to pull this one now. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it all around again. And I'm going to knit to the beginning of my round. Now, this is my cast on, so I'm actually going to pull my tail out of here. See how that loop is really big? It's because it's a tail, so I'm just going to pull it. So that way, when I knit this first stitch, I can kind of get a hold of it. All right, so I'm going to knit this first stitch, which is big and loose because it's on my tail, and then I'm going to knit the second stitch like this. And then I'm going to find that tail and pull it just to tug it in. We'll weave that end in later, so it's okay if it's a little loosey-goosey now. Okay, so technically we are at the beginning of the round right now. So this is great. Now I'm going to do the setup row before the section in the instructions that say begin sleeve shaping. Okay, so I'm going to pass my stitch marker and I am going to knit 3, Okay, so remember we cast on, for my prescribed stitches was 3 on this side and then 4 on that side. So I'm going to knit 3 stitches, which means that I am 1 stitch before the gap in the underarm. So this was the last stitch I cast on, and then these were the ones, this was the last stitch that I pulled up from the cast on edge. This is the first stitch in the gap, okay? Because I did 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we are trying to do is the last stitch from the cast on edge and the first stitch in the gap, we want to knit 2 together to prevent a hole from being there. So now we're going to go underneath like this. I can drop my tail, I've been hanging on to it. I'm going to knit those 2 together, and that will really prevent that gap from happening. So now I'm going to go all the way around, and I'm going to do that same thing with this stitch and this stitch on the other side, and I'll show you how to transfer those around when we get there. Okay, so I'm getting to the end of my second needle here, and I can tell that this is a regular stitch here, and you can tell this is a pulled up one because it's kind of in a strange spot. So these are the 2 that I did in the gap, but I really want to take this one and this one way over here and knit those 2 together. So I'm going to knit this one. Actually, I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit. I'm going to do a decrease. So I don't want to knit this one, but I need this needle to be free so I can turn the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just pass this stitch, and I'm going to just hold it over here for a moment. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this crazy cable, which of course will be in your face and in the way the whole time, but we're smart people. We can train our brain to ignore things that we don't like, and that is definitely one of them. So I'm going to shove this needle into these stitches here. Then what I'm able to do now is I can use, so I've just got a darning needle right here. Okay, see this? I'm just going to take this guy off of here. I'm just going to pass him. Okay, so he's just hanging out on a needle, and I'm just going to swivel him right there. So now this stitch and this stitch can be decreased together. So now I can pull this guy all the way out. And again, we're going to turn the whole thing this way. I'm going to find my live yarn here. And then this one needs to be a slip, slip, knit. So I'm going to get my yarn here. Okay, so I'm going to slip this one as if to knit, slip this one as if to knit, put them both back over on the other needles. This needle should be through the back loop, and I'm going to slip, slip, knit those together. So that stitch is done. Then I'm going to knit to the beginning of my round. Right there. Now, I am about to rearrange the stitches on this sleeve to prepare to go and do the same thing with the other sleeve. Okay, I need this set of needles for the other sleeve, so I'm going to introduce my smaller temporary set, and we're going to jostle some things around. So I want the beginning of my round to change. It is going to stay in this location, but I'm not going to need a stitch marker anymore, and I'll show you why in a moment. These 3 stitches that are over here, or however many you have that are from the underarm, I'm just going to slide the cable in there to save them, okay? Now, this is a wild ride. Just go slow, hang on, and trust me, this will be amazing in the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pass all of the stitches from this needle to my temporary smaller needle, because I need to use this big long needle with my 5s on it to prepare the other sleeve. Now, even though I am passing all of these over and changing needles, I still want to keep the stitch configuration exactly the same. So I want half on one side of the needle and half on the other. Wow. Okay, so I just got done passing all of the stitches off of this needle onto this one. So now I still have these 3 stitches left that were originally on this needle, okay? But look, they're backwards, so I actually need to pick up this one, then this one, then this one. So I'm going to just very easily and carefully slide the cable all the way through, put these stitches on just like this. Now, this is our end of round right here. This is where we ended before we started passing stitches. So now I'm going to pass these 3 stitches over, and bam, I'm at the end of my round. We no longer need an end of round marker because we know once we get to the armpit, we have made a full round. We're going to work across these stitches and then these stitches, and once we're at the armpit, that's at the end of the round. Now, again, this cable is a little too short to do the magic loop on comfortably, but remember, we're going to transfer these for 2 at a time. So this is just a placeholder right here, and now my other needles are free so that I can go prepare the other sleeve. Okay, now that I'm done with sleeve number 1, I'm going to go do the same treatment with sleeve number 2 now that my needles are free for me to do so. So I'm going to take my needles over there. I'm going to take all of my stitches off of the waste yarn. I'm going to arrange them on either side of the needles for magic loop. I'm going to cast on the number of stitches that I need across the cast on edge and the 2 in the gap. Finally, I am going to do that 1 round of decreases so I can pinch those 2 together so there's not a hole there. Lastly, I'm going to rearrange my stitches so that I don't need a stitch marker because my end of round is in the gap between the needles. Once I am there, I'll meet you right back here and I'll show you how to transfer those onto 1 set of needles for 2 at a time sleeves. All right, I have here 2 matching sleeves. Here's the shoulder of the sleeve. I have a loop coming out of one side. Here's the shoulder of the other sleeve. I have a loop coming out. And my end of round naturally occurs between the gap and the needles at the armpit over here and also at the armpit over here. So now it's time to rearrange these stitches and get them all on the same needle. Now, one of the tricks to knitting 2 at a time is the fact that you now have 2 balls of yarn. And as you turn the sweater over and you rearrange it, those balls are going to get tangled and one's going to fall under the couch and then it's going to get tangled with the other one. But you know what? It's better than cleaning your room or doing the dishes. Okay, so I want my long needle to be on my right hand side. So I am going to flip this whole thing over, and you should do the same. Now again, you've got 2 balls of yarn attached, so it's a wee bit painful. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I'm going to start knitting with my long needle, and then I'm going to continue knitting over here with my long needle. That way I'm doing the exact same thing at the exact same time, okay? So here's my live yarn. It means I'm going to knit up this section. Then I'm going to knit up this section, the matching section on side 2. Then I'm going to knit down this section, and then I'm going to knit down this section. So they are going to be knit serially like this. We're going to rearrange them. So we knit up this side, drop our yarn, pick up the yarn over here, knit up this side, rearrange all our stitches by doing the shove maneuver, knit down this side, drop the yarn, pick up the yarn that's waiting for us here, knit down this side. This way, when you do your decreases, you'll be able to do them at the exact same time for both sets of sleeves. It's going to save you so much time. It introduces the heartache of all the tangling, but still, if you're like me and you can't commit to finishing something, brilliant solution. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside over here, and I'm going to knit up this one first. Now, the instructions say that I have to knit 2 rounds before I have to worry about doing any kind of decreases. So I've got plenty of time to get myself all situated and settled in to my new crazy situation. So let's knit up just this one side. All right, I'm coming to the end here. So now I'm just going to set this needle down, and actually, you know what? I'm not. I'm going to go ahead and get it prepared for this next side. So I'm going to shove it all the way in here. Okay, so that way it's out of my way and it's ready. So now I can pull this one out. Okay. Now, this yarn stays on this sleeve. I don't want to touch that anymore. You go over there. You stay there. I'm going to take this needle and I'm going to bring it over here. And let me find the end of this yarn here. It's all tangled up underneath the sweater. Let's get it rearranged. Okay, it is now on the top. Okay, so now I'm just going to take this top needle and I'm going to pull it because it's easier if there's some flexibility in here because I'm going to be working on the underside. If you get lost, just remember, what did I do over here? I did the underside, so I'm going to do the underside over here too. All right, so there's my live yarn. And now I'm knitting onto my correct needles, which is great.
I'm not sure about
that. Okay, last stitch. So I'm going to set that needle down. Okay, and then I need to turn the corner now. So I'm going to shove this one down in there. Like that. Okay, and now I'm ready to turn the corner so I can pull this way. And you'll notice that now I have a continuous wave up the back sides of the sleeves right there. Okay, so now I need to work this way, which of course I'm not left-handed, so here we go. Ooh, I'm trying to decide which way is the best way to turn it here. Turn, 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 turn. All right, now all of my yarn is tangled, so let me untangle it here. Okay, so now that I'm all turned around, ooh, let's get this guy out from under here. He now goes with this sleeve over here. So everybody trades a little places. We do a little dance, shuffle around a little. And now that I've turned the corner, I can continue down this side. And then I will be free of this needle. It will be so great. All right, getting to the last few stitches on this side, and now my temporary needle is free, so that can go away. And now it's time for me to, look, there's a needle waiting for me right over here, so you know right where to go. Here's the live yarn, and I need to knit across this one. So now I just need to be careful that I don't pull my loop over here too tight. So I'm going to just pull a little this way, push a little this way, and that's plenty enough for me to continue across this last needle. Okay, last stitch here. And boom, done. Okay, so now all you have to do is keep knitting across all of these needles around and around and around until your sleeve measures 3 inches from the armpit. Then we'll tackle the decreases. But this is perfect. This will give you just a little time to get used to doing the magic loop. So I'm going to work until I have 3 inches, and then I'll meet you right back here for the decreases. Okay, I finally have 3 inches of sleeve here. This is looking so great. So now I am going to begin the decreases. So the decreases here are pretty easy. It's just a knit 2 together, and then it's a slip, slip, knit. So the great thing about this particular pattern is normally in most patterns I knit 1 and then I do my decrease, but here we're actually going to knit 4 before we do our decrease. So that way the decreases just won't be all cluttered right here next to each other under the arm. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this needle, and I'm going to knit my 4 stitches. And then I'm going to perform my knit 2 together. Boom, first decrease done. Now I'm going to knit across this part of the sleeve, and then I'm going to repeat that decrease on the second sleeve since I am doing 2 at a time sleeves. Okay, I finished with that one. So now I'm going to get this next one onto this needle and pull a little bit of slack here. find my live yarn that's attached to this sleeve here. And then I'm going to knit 4. And then I'm going to do my knit 2 together. Now I'm going to continue across this side of the sleeve, and I'm going to start on the other side of the sleeve, and I am going to knit until I am 6 stitches away from this side over here. So I'm going to knit all the way around, and then I will stop when I've got 6 stitches here, and then we're going to do the decrease on the opposite side. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I need one more. All right, and now here I'm going to do a slip, slip, knit. So I'm going to slip this one as if I was going to knit it, and I'm just going to move it over to this needle here. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to pretend like I'm going to knit it, but then I'm just going to move it over. Now I'm going to put these 2 stitches back over on the other needle. So all I've done is flip them around. But now I'm going to knit through the back loops. So I'm going to insert my needle through the 2 back loops, and then I'm going to knit them together just like that. And then I'm going to finish the last 4 stitches. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing. Here's my other sleeve. I'm coming back across. So I'm going to get these situated on this needle, and I'm going to pull this needle out so that I can use it to knit with. Find my live yarn here, and I'm going to knit across this sleeve until I have 6 stitches left. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now I am going to slip and then slip and then put those back on this needle. And look, I'm kind of already behind there already. That's a little cheat. Once you flip them, you can just put this left needle in the front like this, and then these are automatically, your right needle is automatically in the back, and then you can knit the 2 together and then knit to the end. Now here is the difference for those of you who are beginners here. If you look at this stitch here, you can see my decrease. It's leaning that direction. It is leaning to the left. But if I flip the sleeve over and I show you the decrease where we did a knit 2 together, which is right here, you can see that that is leaning this way to the right. Pretty cool, right? So then they are mirror images. So now that you're done with your first decrease round, you have a prescribed amount of stitches that you are going to knit around evenly for your size before you perform another decrease. So keep track of the number of decrease rounds that you do. There's a prescribed number of those too. So not only do you have to keep track of how many decrease rounds you do, but you also have to keep track of how many rounds between the decrease rounds that you're doing. It's a whole thing. Use a stitch counter or mark it on a little piece of paper. I like to just keep sticky notes all over everything so that I can just tally what I'm doing as I'm going. Okay, so now once you are all done with the decreases of your sleeves, I like to try on my sweater before I stop to do the ribbing. Now your ribbing on your sleeve is going to be 3 inches. So if you very carefully take the stitches off of your needles, you can put them on waste yarn. However, because you're doing 2 at a time sleeves, it is a good idea to lay your sleeves out and take a picture with your phone so that you know exactly how to put the stitches back onto the needles so that you can try your sweater on. Now, if your cable is long enough, if you keep the sleeves together, you can carefully get into it while it's on the cable and you'll be like handcuffed, but at least you can put your hands out and see, oh yes, 3 inches will be perfect for me for now, or no, I need to do another 10 rounds before I start my ribbing. Also, you can feel free to slip some onto a different cable or put waste yarn. And even at that point, you can stop doing 2 at a time and just work 1 cuff at a time if you can't seem to get them back on the needles to do 2 at a time. Cheat to win. I do all kinds of variations of stuff, kind of whatever I feel like and whatever makes it the easiest. So you're going to continue your sleeves. You're going to try the sweater on. You're going to make sure that the sleeves are the right length before you start your ribbing. You're going to switch to a smaller needle. We already know all about how to do the ribbing. And again, when you're done with your ribbing, if you're not sure yet, then try it on one last time to make sure the sleeves are exactly where you want it before doing the bind off. So that's it for this video, but in the next video, we're going to review the decrease bind off that we're going to do on the sleeves again. So once my sleeves are just perfect, I'll meet you in that video and we'll review the bind off and then we're going to try it on. I'm so excited. That's the best part. After we try it on and make sure it fits really nicely, we're going to talk a little bit about blocking. So I'll see you there.